So what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Whether you're a new leopard gecko owner or you've had your leopard gecko for several years, it's super important to be able to know whether your leopard gecko is actually healthy, as well as understand how a healthy leopard gecko should be acting. So in today's video, I'm going to break down 10 key signs that your leopard gecko is healthy and thriving. So let's dive into it. Number 1. Alertness and activity. Now, a healthy leopard gecko would respond to movement as well as light changes, and they should be aware of when it's feeding time. Leopard geckos are a crepuscular species, so they might be more active during dusk and dawn. But if your leopard gecko is totally lethargic all of the time, then this would be a red flag and would be an indicator that your leopard gecko might not be doing so great. Like I say, they should be quite active. They should be willing to move around their enclosure freely, and they should also be curious to explore their enclosure. Number 2. Bright, clear eyes. Observing your leopard gecko's eyes can be a huge indicator that your leopard gecko is actually healthy. Their eyes should be wide open whilst they're awake, with no swelling or discharge or cloudiness coming from their eyes. Now, if your leopard gecko's in sheds, then it might have some sort of cloudy eyes. But if your leopard gecko has cloudy eyes outside of shedding, then this could indicate some kind of infection or even retained shed. So you'll definitely want to get this looked at if this was the case. But like I say, for the most of the time, your leopard gecko's eyes should be bright and full of life, and they should be quite responsive to things going on around them. Number 3, a massive fat tail. Now, leopard geckos store the majority of their fat in their tails, and a healthy leopard gecko would have a fat, thick tail. Like I say, their tail should be quite thick and straight with no kinks or shriveledness to it. Now, if your gecko has a skinny tail like this, and this could be a sign of what's called stick tail. If your leopard gecko has got stick tail, then this could be a sign of a illness or starvation. So you'll definitely want to get your leopard gecko checked out in case it's some kind of illness. But like I say, this is exactly how your leopard gecko's tail should look. A nice, full, plump tail. Number 4, steady weight. Now, a young baby and juvenile leopard gecko should be gaining weight very frequently, and an adult leopard gecko should have somewhat of a stable weight. Now, in order to know what your leopard gecko weighs, you're going to need to frequently weigh them. I recommend for people to weigh their leopard geckos at least once every other week, and this way you're going to be able to actually keep track of how much your leopard gecko weighs and be able to see whether they're gaining in weight, but also whether they're losing weight. Now, the reason why it's important to keep track of your leopard gecko's weight is for when they are losing weight, because this can be a sign of an illness or a sign that your leopard gecko might not be doing so great. Like I say, an adult leopard gecko would have somewhat of a stable weight. It shouldn't be rapidly losing weight. Number 5. Clean nose and vents. Now, your leopard gecko's nose should be clear with no signs of bubbling or any kind of like clicking sound coming from the nose. On top of this, their mouth shouldn't be constantly open as if they're struggling to breathe. I'd also recommend checking their vent. Bubbling coming from the mouth or nose can indicate a health problem. So I'd certainly get this looked at if you notice any signs of bubbling or discharge coming from their nose or mouth. I'd also keep an eye on their ear vents. Make sure there's no stuck retained shed there. Make sure to remove any if there is. On top of this, you can also look underneath your leopard gecko to their bum area where they would poo from. Just make sure it's not crusty or really dirty. It should be nice and clean around this area. Like I say, all vents should be clear and free from any kind of bubbling or discharge, and your leopard gecko shouldn't have swelling in these areas either. But if your leopard gecko doesn't show any of these signs, then there's a high chance that your leopard gecko is healthy. Number 6, a strong appetite. Now, yes, during the winter times, leopard geckos tend to slow down with their food, but for the majority of the year, your leopard gecko should have a strong appetite. They don't eat every day, but they should show consistent interest with eating food. If you feed on a frequent basis or a frequent schedule, you'll probably notice that your leopard gecko will start coming out around the times that you feed. This would also be a good sign that your leopard gecko is interested in food. Like I say, your leopard gecko should have a strong appetite and shouldn't really turn up the opportunity to eat food. Now, if your leopard gecko has an appetite loss when they're not actually shedding or in brumation, this is definitely something worth investigating. Now, keep in mind, leopard geckos can be notorious for being fussy eaters. And what I mean by this is 1 minute they could absolutely love something. For example, they might absolutely love locusts. And then all of a sudden they just turn their nose up at locusts and they just don't want anything to do with it. So this is why it's important to always switch up what you're feeding to your leopard geckos and provide a nice variety for them. This will help keep that spark of interest and will hopefully give them a strong appetite. If your leopard gecko stops eating completely, then this could be an underlying health problem, so I definitely would investigate this. Number 7, normal shedding. A healthy leopard gecko would shed their skin every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how old they are. A healthy leopard gecko will usually eat their shed once they've actually removed it from their body. The reason why they do this is because their shed contains a lot of calcium within it. So they basically will eat the shed to absorb the calcium which they've just lost. Your leopard gecko should be able to access a higher humidity. Usually this is in a form of a humid hide. And what they'll do is they'll spend a lot more time in this area whilst they're in shed. And this will help them remove their skin a lot easier. The leopard gecko should be able to pull its shed off nice and easily at its own pace. And it shouldn't be coming off in stuck patches. Now, since we're on the topic of stuck shed, please keep an eye on the tip of their tail as well as their toes for any signs of stuck shed. On top of this, keep an eye on their eyes for stuck shed too. And if you notice that they have got stuck shed around these areas, I'd recommend giving them a small bath just to help soften it up, and hopefully you can remove it a lot easier for them. Number 8. Firm, solid poop cycle. Yeah, I thought I'd mention this one. A healthy leopard gecko poop should be quite firm, dark brown with a white urate. Your leopard gecko's poo shouldn't be runny, or it shouldn't be a diarrhea consistency, because this could mean something like a parasite, or it could even be a poor diet. If you notice that your leopard gecko has got diarrhea or runny poop, then I'd certainly get this looked into, because there could be an underlying health problem there. On top of this, I'd also look out for any signs of blood in their poo, and again, seek vet's advice on this if this is the case. But like I say, if your leopard gecko's poop is firm, dark brown with a white urate, then this means that your leopard gecko's pooping perfectly fine, and also could be a good indicator that your leopard gecko is healthy. Number 9, responsive to handling. If your leopard gecko is calm and doesn't freak out when you try and handle them, then this could be a great sign that your gecko is happy and healthy. Being able to handle your gecko and have them calm and not freaking out is a good sign that they trust you, but also shows that they're in good health. Sudden aggression or constant hiding can sometimes mean something's gone wrong, or it can mean that they get stressed out when you try and approach them. Obviously, the younger geckos tend to be a lot more skittish than adults are, and over time you would build a good solid bond with a young leopard gecko. But your leopard gecko shouldn't start swooping its tail every single time you try and approach it, because this would indicate that your gecko is stressed out. And since we're on the topic of stress, a healthy leopard gecko wouldn't be showing signs of stress. It would be very calm and docile natured. Number 10, clean intact skin. Observing your leopard gecko's skin is a great way to identify whether your leopard gecko is healthy or not. Healthy skin would be smooth, not flaky, with no cuts or scratches on them. You should also not see any signs of aberrations or any kind of retained shed. Like I say, their skin should be nice and smooth. If you notice any signs of cuts or scratches, then it could mean that your leopard gecko has hurt itself without you realizing. Definitely get this looked into if this was the case. So there we go, guys. That is 10 ways that you can identify if your leopard gecko is healthy. Now, keep in mind that a leopard gecko isn't going to be perfect 24/7, but consistent patterns do matter here. And if you notice multiple signs of poor health, it's definitely worth seeking a vet's advice on this. in order to get your leopard gecko happy and healthy again. Let me know in the comments if your leopard geckos are experiencing any kind of weird abnormal behaviours, because I might be able to help pinpoint what the problem could be. If your leopard gecko is unwell, you can usually tell by observing their behaviour, and it's important that you do try and start observing their behaviours, because abnormal behaviours usually indicate different health problems, and by narrowing down the options, you'll be able to get the right help for your leopard gecko. Also, let me know if there's any kind of videos that you would like me to put together. But yeah, I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it and learnt something from it. And yeah, I suppose I shall see you in my next video. See ya!